I've been told off by Seam of Ed publicly, so I'll have to add that to my CV.
Yes.
Mona, welcome. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, everybody on the panel earlier. It was incredible, and I'm so proud to be here.
Thank you for coming back. You've supported us since day one, 2019.
Honestly, that experience was incredible. I met some amazing people, including people here today, and it's been a game changer for me. So I think what you're doing here with the Retail Summit and Dubai Chamber is really bringing amazing people together, and the connections are so valuable. So I'll be back every year.
Thank you, Mona. So look, let's jump into our conversation. I think this region is known for bringing international brands into the UAE and into Dubai, and probably not so much for homegrown talent that's exporting globally. We have a case study right here before us with Kayali, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And I think we should start off by, letting people know why you chose this category. There are a lot of people in the market, and kind of when you set out to come into the fragrances, what was the USP? What did you think, okay, this is going to set us apart from everybody else?
Thank you. I mean, for me, my story really comes from my life experience and also moving to Dubai. When I first moved here, I was 17, it was 2002, and I have always been in love with fragrances, but when I moved here, I was really inspired by how people use fragrances here, and it was really the locals and people in the GCC, the way they use fragrance is like no other, and I was like, if I could ever create a brand one day, I feel like there's something missing in the market, and I want to take what the culture is doing here in the UAE and share it with the world. So that's where the inspiration came from, and I've always been in love with business. I've always been, my dream has always been to be an entrepreneur. I love learning about entrepreneurship, and rags to riches stories really inspired me. And again, I think that comes from being here in Dubai, like coming here in 2002, seeing the growth that the city has had, seeing growth that people who came here, what they could do and what they could achieve was such a big inspiration. So I always knew I wanted to create a business and a brand, but the meaning behind it had to be something that I could continue, during the tough times. And for me, my passion lies in fragrance. I think it comes from being a sensitive, emotional person, and again, just being inspired by the culture here, and that's why the name Kayali means my imagination in Arabic, and we talk about layering, and again, that's coming from the region. People here layer their fragrances, they use different scents, they mix it together, they mix different things such as oils, perfumes, bakhur, and so many other things. So I really thought I could do something different. And I think that's every founder-led brand, the USP comes from your story. And I think that's what's different to like other brands. You can't really dictate what the story is. It has to be true to the evolution of how it started, where it's going, the values of the company. But as a founder and having a founder-led brand, I think that's one of the beauties, but also one of the hardest parts, because you have to understand your own why and your own reason behind everything. So if you can dig in deep and find out, why are you wanting to do this, and do the inner work of like understanding yourself, the story comes on its own, and that's your USP.
Now, Mona, you understated your love of fragrances. I think we should let people know about your fragrance room. And how many fragrances do you own?
Over 4,000.
4,000
I'm trying to get the world record, so we're hopefully a few years away.
How many?
If anybody wants to send me some fragrances that you don't use, send it to my office. We're trying to beat the record. The record's around 6,000 fragrances, so we're hoping to get to 6,500 in a few years, so we can get the Guinness World Record. But again, I think fragrance is such a big part of the culture here. And I do think Dubai is becoming the perfume capital of the world. I know it's still in France, but I think the world is changing, and I think there's a lot of change in the industry. And I think because of the beauty of social media, like they have frag talk on TikTok and Instagram, people are all talking about Arabic fragrances now, and it's really incredible to see the growth that is happening. And for us today, I can proudly say we're Sephora's fastest growing brand in the world globally in the fragrance category, and they've never seen a brand grow like ours. And I think it's coming from such a strong, rich culture story that is authentic to who I am and my journey as well.
Let's talk about social media and how we're going to ask for some tips from you and how people here could leverage their social media channels to reach consumer, increase their engagement, and obviously you're a pro when it comes to leveraging your social channels. So what advice would you give to anybody here?
I would say it's not hard. It just takes a lot of consistency and being true to yourself. I think that with social media, it's it's just a matter of telling your story, speaking to your community, getting to know who you are, because once you know who you are, you know who your community will become. Because if you fake it and you try to be somebody else, it's not going to work long term. People are very aware of what's happening. So
is it consistency with tone of voice, or is it
I
consistency
would
with
say with
volume?
everything, your tone of voice and your story as well. Like, for example, if today someone saw my social media and they tried to replicate it because they think it's doing well, if that's not who you are, it's not going to work long term. Like, eventually people are going to see this isn't consistent with everything you do. And like, that's one thing that's so beautiful about social media. It's very transparent. People understand. They see a lot. You have to, in order to succeed, you need to be pumping it out constantly. So people are very aware of reality. So if you're funny, be funny. If you're a bit like sarcastic and a bit rude, be rude and sarcastic. You're gonna find your tribe, you know. So I think just being really authentic to who you are and knowing your values as a person, as a founder, or as a brand, whatever it is, you know, just remain consistent and keep going, keep building relationships with your community. And again, I think the blessing of social media is that we have the ability to access our community and engage with them and keep the relationship. The con, or the challenge, I would say, is competition is fierce. Like, that means the access to starting up and launching a brand and building a community is very easy, and anyone can do it. So it's really competitive, and you have to stay agile, you have to evolve, and you just have to keep trying things. And what works today might not work tomorrow. So it's a lot of hard work, and that's probably a big part of my role, is just like trying to figure out content, trying to figure out community, and evolving really quickly.
Let's talk about taking the brand global, because again, looking at homegrown talent here, you know, they might have a decent hold on the market within the region, but to take it outside of the territory, you know, how have you done that? Is it through collaborations? Is it partnerships? Is it on your own? You know, that's an important question.
You know, it's been different for both brands. Like, I would say, you know, we had our experience with Huda Beauty, which was very different to my experience with Kayali, because with Huda Beauty, we kind of had to wait to prove ourselves per region. Like, we started here in the GCC, then we expanded to the UK, and then we basically begged Sephora US to take a chance on us. But we built the community first, so we had the social platforms, we had a big following already in those markets, so there was like less risk. With Kayali, we already had the relationship with Sephora ahead of launching, so we already had the existing partnership, which was amazing. And for us, you know, we are a business that relies very heavy on one partner, so it's our global distribution. Majority of the business is through Sephora. I'd say 90%, which is amazing, but it's also risky, of course. But they've helped us with our distribution, so I'd say I'm lucky to have that be available for me. It's not the case with every brand and not every industry. Like, I think for beauty, it's a special situation where one retailer is very strong in majority of markets. You don't see that so much in fashion. You don't see it so much in other industries. But for us, that's been an amazing global partnership. And I'd say it added pressure, you know. So when we first launched the brand, we launched Kayali in end of 2018. And for the first 2 years, like, it wasn't really performing. I was still trying to figure myself out as a founder-led brand, being the face of the brand. And I think there was a lot of trial and error. And again, I think just I didn't really take the time to lean into my story and understand why I was doing what I was doing. And then COVID happened, and I had a lot of time in my basement, and I did a lot of therapy, and I started to dig in and understand myself. And I think that really changed the storytelling and also just expressing myself. So I think that if I could give advice to everyone who has either a community focus with your brand, or you have a founder-led brand that you're trying to build, dig in really deep. As deep as you can go, the better the story will be, the more relatable it will be, and the more authentic it will be, which will give it longevity, right? Because if you have a true, deep and meaningful story, like, there's so much to build on it, you know, versus just, okay, there's a great business idea, I'm gonna launch one of those too, you know? So I think just understanding yourself is very undervalued in business. Like, we don't talk about it enough, where it's a game changer.
So that's interesting that you've had success as an entrepreneur with one brand, you created another, but you still had challenges in the first couple of years.
A lot of challenges. I mean, you know, every brand has challenges. Like, no matter what, even if people think, okay, you're so successful, like, we all know, like, behind the scenes, like, it's a roller coaster, and you're gonna have your ups and your downs. But I think that, you know, having my experience with the two global brands, you know, Huda Beauty had a very different path. Kayali has had a very different path, but I'm just trying my best to learn from all the mistakes that we made, so I just hope we don't repeat them. I'm sure I'm gonna make new ones, because that's just life. But yeah, I think no brand is the same, and especially timing is everything. You know, times have changed since we launched the first, you know, Huda Beauty in 2013. Times are very different today. So I think you just have to keep pushing yourself to learn and grow and have great mentors like Seema, who's a very good friend of mine, a mentor as well, and you know, amazing events like this. Like I've met so many great people today, which I really appreciate, and even the last time you held this event, it's just having great relationships with people who can teach you something, and you support each other, and you can all grow together.
Absolutely. You touched on it earlier, you said, you know, the Middle East is becoming the perfume capital, you know, and there's the balance between Middle Eastern fragrances to Western or international audiences.
Yeah.
How do you strike the balance? Is it Middle Eastern brand going global? Is it a mix? Is there somewhere in between?
You know, I don't want to disrespect Grasse in France because they've done phenomenal work for the entire industry for centuries.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take away from the amazing, you know, work and the resources we have from those amazing institutions there. But I think the GCC has always been a perfume capital, but nobody really understood that. And that's because of the innovation. It's very intricate, it's very rich, it's a really amazing part of the culture. It's a part of the DNA, and I think that's something that has been around for more than centuries, you know, and I was not aware of that, you know, even though I have Arab roots, you know, I grew up in the States, I was there for the first 17 years of my life, but when I moved to Dubai, I was like blown away. I was like, what is this ritual that people do on a daily basis? They have a ritual for the day, the night, for occasions like Eid, for weddings. Like there was so much passion put into fragrance where, you know, at the time when I had first moved here from the States, fragrance was an afterthought. It was like, oh, only on a special occasion. Maybe when you leave the house, you put on the same fragrance you wore for 10 years or something like that. Where, you know, on the flip side here in the region, like there was so much intention put into it. You know, you go to the markets, you go to the souk, there's like people mixing oils for you. There was just such a high level of intricacy put into the fragrance making and also wearing, you know, like every Emirati home I went to, they'd greet me with a tray of fragrances, and I was like, what is this? Like, I mean, if you're lucky, you know, in the West at that time, of course times have changed, but if I was lucky, maybe you'd have a fragrance in a guest bathroom that, you know, you'd use, and it was like 10 years old with dust on it. Like, it's such a different, you know, ball game here. There's so much hospitality, so much passion put into it, so much generosity as well, and I was very inspired by that, and I still am inspired by that, and I think that the world still doesn't know enough about fragrance in the region. I think there's so much beauty to be shared, so much passion, and so much culture.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at your entrepreneurial journey, you know, we have to look at some of the lessons that you have learned along the way, good, bad, and you know, there will be people in the audience here that are on a entrepreneurial journey, maybe at the start, at beginning. What advice would you give them based on some of your experiences?
Oh my gosh, where do we begin? There's so much, and I feel like I like to reflect a lot. You know, I try to reflect, if I can, daily. Like I have a note called Lessons and Regrets, and I try to keep notes as often as I can. But if I had to just keep it really short and simple, I would say, number one, really try to understand yourself. And again, I'd say that's really undervalued. People are so busy trying to keep up with their goals or the pressure of society to create something that everybody else is doing. And I think that whenever you do that, you're setting yourself up for either failure or limitations. You know, if you follow your own path, there's something special about every single one of us. And if you try to figure out like what inspires you, what makes you light up, what makes you motivated, there's something about you that you can share either as a business or, you know, a community that you build, like what you've been doing. It's amazing. You know, so I think just really try to understand yourself, spend time reflecting, have great mentors. And if you are deciding to create a founder-led business, I believe it's extremely different to creating a business. You know, you have to really have a deep and meaningful why and something that will set you apart. And you have to be committed for 10 to 15 years minimum, because usually the first 5 years, you're just figuring it out, and you're probably gonna be spending lots of money. You're gonna earn nothing. So just anticipate this is an investment, and it's not to just be self-employed or like have flexibility. It's like the opposite. You're gonna be a slave to your business. You're gonna have to like dedicate your full life to this and do whatever it takes, because it takes a lot. And you know, again, if you're successful one day, it doesn't mean it's gonna be that way the next day or year. It's like you have to keep moving, keep evolving, and planning for the future. And I personally like to be very over-planned and prepared. Like I have a 10 to 15-year roadmap for myself and the business, and I try to think very far ahead. And again, I think, like what Sima was saying, I'm very inspired by being here in Dubai. A lot of the values I have today are from being here for the past 22 years. My whole foundation of adulthood and entrepreneurship was built off the city, and I think what is amazing about Dubai is, like, I think the leaders here are very visionary. You know, like there's a 10-year plan, even beyond, and they share that with you, and they're transparent, and they like let you understand, and they ask for feedback, and I think that's something that I've borrowed for my own values for my company.
And we heard this over the last 2 days around instant gratification. It's, Karen Millen, Oswald Boateng, 10 years, 5 years, 15 years for their business to be a success, and you said exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it, I left my first job in 2009, and that's when my self-employed journey started, and it's been, everything has added value to where I am today because of that. So it's been a very long time in the making, 15 years in the making, and I'd say without every experience I had along the way, I don't think I'd be here today.
Yeah. Let's look at the future of Kayali. And I know there might be some crystal ball thinking here, but it would be great to understand where you would like to take the brand.
We are on an amazing path right now. We are doing really well in terms of growth, in terms of sales. We're doing 100% year on year, which is phenomenal.
Amazing.
I know that might not continue as the numbers get even larger, and it's going to be harder, but I just want to keep up the growth and the momentum, the international distribution, which, we are expanding quite fast, but I also want to enter other categories too. So we launched a oud collection last year, which was 5 years in the making, lots of sweat, blood, and tears, lots of disasters, lots of difficulties on the compliance side, just trying to meet international compliance, but that's a passion project of mine because I want to represent the culture and share it with the world. But I just want to continue what I'm doing. I love my job. It's not a job to me. I feel like there is so much passion, and I just want to see the business grow, and I hope to, I just hope to see it resonate with people, and I want to change the whole industry. I don't want just Kayali to succeed. I want everyone to understand that perfume is something that should be used as a tool to feel confident, to express yourself, and to, I know we talk about power soup, power lipstick. I'm like, there's a power perfume. Like, I want people to be inspired by that, and I want to see the whole category grow, not just for me.
Well, you haven't seen my last question, but you've just set it up very nicely. And it's talking about the fragrance industry as a whole and how you see it evolving, and where you see your role in helping it to evolve.
It has been evolving quite drastically, especially after COVID, because I think that was a time where everybody was forced to just try and find a way to feel better. We're all locked up in our homes for the most part. Didn't have connection with people if you live alone or whatever. So it was a very challenging time, and I think that time frame, although it was horrible for so many reasons, for the perfume industry, it just flipped it upside down. And it's so funny because prior to that, I was telling the retailers so many things. I was like, people are going to start layering their fragrances to create their mood. People are going to do this, and they're like, data shows people buy one perfume a year. You're lucky if they even buy one, and they're not going to buy more than one. They're not going to. They were like, this is not going to happen. It's just not what people do. Consumers don't do this. And then after COVID, it was a big game changer. Because people started using their fragrances more candles, home fragrance, because they wanted to shift how they felt in their space. And some people were in very small spaces, like a studio apartment with a family, and it's like, how do you feel better? It's like a fragrance, a candle could really change the vibe and the feeling of the entire space. So that was really transformational. Additionally, we saw a huge growth on content creation in fragrance. And that was a game changer for me, especially because when we first launched Kayali, I was like, I'm going to approach it the way we approached Huda Beauty, which is like really leaning in on our influencers, our community, to talk about the fragrance. When I started building my database of fragrance content creators, there was like less than 100. And even those 100 didn't do it very well. It was like people didn't understand how to explain something that's not visual, something that's emotional, something that's a feeling. So after COVID, you saw the rise of content creators in fragrance, and it's exploding. It's probably the fastest growing category of content creation in beauty. So we have a huge huge community on color, skincare. But now fragrance is still like on the rise, and people are enjoying speaking about their emotions, which is amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Mona, we're out of time, but I think between us and the Retail Summit, we'll get you up to 6,500 bottles as soon as we can.
Oh my God, thank you.
Thank you very
You're all
much.
welcome to come to our offices and join the perfume library anytime.
Thank you, Mona.
Thank you so
Round of
much.
applause, Mona. Thank you.
Thank you.